Thanks, Dale. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Hopefully you're doing well wherever you might happen to be. Again, my name is Rachel Haroldson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from the University of Wisconsin River Falls, and I work and teach and supervise in the STEM Teach program, which is a one-year initial licensure graduate program for career changers coming back to become secondary math and science teachers. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about ways that you can use children's literature to teach about computational thinking and how to use that to expose and enhance lessons you're already doing. A lot of the work that I'm going to be talking about today, I did with one of my graduate students, Dave Ballard. He's not here with me, but I do want to give him a shout out because he's the other half of all of this work. So I'm going to screen share and we're going to be using Pear Deck today. So I'm going to just talk through how we're going to use it. This allows me to make the presentation a little bit more interactive with all of you. Okay, so if this is your first time using Pear Deck, you're going to want to go to the website joinpd.com. And then once you get there, you want to type in the code SJFFWE. Stoic Jacks fondly form warm elephants. And then you can use your name or give yourself a nickname. And then we'll kind of go through this presentation together. So, oh, someone's already joined. This is exciting. I always love it once the first student comes in. This is exciting. And like Dale said, please just turn your mic off or your mic on and interrupt me if you have any questions at any time. I really want this to be as interactive as possible and would appreciate just hearing other voices. So I see 3 students are connected. Good, keep going, keep it coming. 4 students are connected, awesome. Looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us here. So I'll just wait a little bit more time. And I'm gonna make a note here of the code. So if anyone joins us a little bit later, we will have it SJFFWE. 6 students connected. We'll wait 1 more minute. So again, go to the website joinpd.com and then type in the code SJFFWE. Seventh, the power of wait time. All right, I'm going to get going. If anybody needs the code or something happens along the way, just give me a shout out and I'll throw it in the chat for you. So let's get started. All right. So the first thing is, I want to know, who are you? So give me your name. What are your pronouns? What's your job title? Or if you want to tell me the school that you work at, or if you work at some place that's a district or an organization, or you just want to tell me your job title. And then what is or maybe was your favorite children's book? I use both past and present tense because maybe you have a current one now that's different than when you were a child, or maybe you've always had the same one. So thanks again for joining, and just start typing in those responses. All right. Hi, Michelle. Early childhood. Pete the cat. Oh, Pete the cat's he's a family favorite over here at my house. Hi, Lauren. Great EL teacher and computer teacher, Blooming Prairie. Shag the Last of the Plains Buffalo. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna have to check that one out. That sounds great. Rebecca, great to see you, Rebecca. You're in Byron, reading specialist and teacher from the Black Lagoon. All right, I'm gonna check that one out. Caitlin, hi Caitlin, Piggy and Elephant. Oh, also a fan favorite in our house as well. Caitlin, hi Caitlin, instructional equity coach. Hi Nick, Sam and Gus. Now I haven't heard of Sam and Gus. Is that a series? Ooh, the Three Ninja Pigs. I'm gonna have to try looking up that one too. It just sounds really fun. All right. Anybody? Oh, and I love, oh, right. Yeah, Fry Bed. Yeah, we've just started reading that one a lot in my house. It's so good. Such a great book. Let's see if anyone else has added anything. All right. Looking good. Thanks, everybody. Ooh, what would Danny do? Oh, that sounds like a good one. Thanks, everybody. This is great to see all of your responses. So whether we're using books already in our classroom or we have children of our own or just a lover of books, we all have some titles to share with each other. One of my favorites right now is Goodnight Lab. So if you haven't read Goodnight Lab, it's sort of like Goodnight Moon, but it happens in the science lab. So that's also a fun one that we like to read a lot at a class. So welcome everybody. Thanks again for being here. So a little bit about the why of where this came up. So my grad student and I, we have done two different analyses at this point. Today, I'm going to talk about the analyses that's really looking at computational thinking in children's books. And so we wanted to really be clear about our why. So my grad student and I were really passionate about computer science education. One of his teaching licenses is in computer science. The candidates in my program have the option based on their credentials to get a license in computer science. So we're just really passionate. And we started noticing this surge in children's books around computer science. We like reading. We already did an analysis about the CS practices. So this image right here shows the 7 CS practices that would have put out by CSTA and a couple of other groups. And then this evolved to us thinking specifically about computational thinking, which is a part of the CS practices. And what does that really look like in literature? And how does that help or inform teachers in the classroom? Because it's really about integrating, right? Elementary teachers, they'll talk about in a little bit in particular, are always being asked to have more put into their classroom, and they don't necessarily have time for a special segment just for computer science. So finding ways to integrate computational thinking and CS practices is really the ideal. And then my grad student and I, we also have young children of our own. So we were just had this real personal interest. So that's our why. So what is this about? This is about non-programming exposure to develop computational thinking skills. So oftentimes when people think about computational thinking, they think about programming. And certainly the two are closely aligned and interconnected, but they're not required. And in fact, there's quite a few researchers that are out there calling for us to teach about computational thinking separate from programming so that we can really lay the foundation for students. And cognitively, some students are just not ready for programming, whether we're talking about kindergartners or we're talking about fifth graders. So really, the early exposure to computational thinking should be about laying the groundwork, thinking about vocabulary, thinking about symbols, thinking about algorithmic processes and abstraction. And oftentimes this looks like unplugged activities. Unplugged activities are activities that don't require an electronic device. They're typically low cost, they're low floor, meaning they're very accessible, and they're not very material intensive. Again, things that teachers really look for: accessible, low cost, those sorts of pieces. And unplugged activities have shown to be effective at learning computational thinking skills separate from programming, right? So really thinking about developing computational thinking skills in a priming way to prime students' understanding of computational thinking so they're set up later down the road to then engage in programming. We also want to use activities that are familiar and accessible to teachers, because if they're not familiar and accessible, they're not going to integrate the activities. And so that's something we really want to consider, is making it so that teachers are going to go in and do these activities to help their students develop computational thinking skills. And there's different levels of computational thinking integration. So we can think about this as exposing students. We can take lessons that we're already doing and enhancing them to include computational thinking, or what's there that we can highlight more. So the computational thinking might already be in a lesson, whether that's a math lesson or a science lesson, and how do we really make that a little bit more prominent? We enhance it or extend, right? The next piece. So we've done something, how can we extend it a little bit more to layer computational thinking on top of it? So this is really about, what does literature have to offer us? Well, literature, when it comes to computer science and computational thinking, it's an unplugged activity. It does not require an electronic device. Elementary teachers, as you know, are already familiar with using literature in their classroom. They're using it all the time, seamlessly and naturally. And we argue that literature can be used to explore and expose computational thinking concepts simply by reading the book and talking about what's happening in it. It can be used to enhance computational thinking concepts. So maybe you're doing something in your class and you want to highlight the computational thinking going on. Literature could help with that. Or maybe extend. So you've done something, you want to move to the next phase and introduce computational thinking, and a book might help you with that too. So those are the things that we think literature really has to offer. So the research questions that really guided this analysis were, what elements of computational thinking are represented in the books? And what grade level computational thinking competencies are represented in the books? So first, we wanted to say, okay, these are the specific elements of computational thinking. Which ones do we find in the books that we chose? And what grade level? So even though the interest level of the book might be targeted for K2, what's really the computational thinking competency that's going on there? Is it targeted for grade 2, or maybe is it for a higher grade level? So we did a book selection using searches through Novelist K8 and WorldCat, and we used official Library of Congress search terms. Now you'll notice here that we don't actually have computational thinking. That's because at this point in time, computational thinking is not a Library of Congress standard search term. We're not exactly sure why that is, but our conjecture is that it's actually still too new, based on some of the research that's out there. So we came across lots and lots of titles, and we ultimately narrowed it down to 27 books. So we narrowed in on books that were written just for the kindergarten through the 6th grade audience. We wanted something that was a narrative format, so that excluded a reference book, that excluded a how-to, so how to code Ruby or how to code Python, or language-specific books. So, and the books had to contain clearly at least one element of computational thinking. So we narrowed this down to 27 books. And don't worry, book list will be coming shortly. I definitely have that to share with all of you. And I also have this presentation as a tiny URL to share with you as well, so that you can go back and look at any of this other information. So we used a framework designed by Angeli and colleagues that came out in 2016. And what they did is they looked at some of the research around what computational thinking is and the different elements. And they said, okay, well, we're going to narrow this down to 5 elements, or the element of abstraction, the element of generalization, the element of decomposition, algorithmic thinking, and debugging. And Angeli and colleagues said, all right, these are the 5 skills or elements that we're going to use in designing our computational thinking framework, right? So these would be the elements of computational thinking we would want to see integrated at the K-12 level. And then what they did is they said, okay, we're going to create these grade bands. So there's kindergarten through 2nd, there's 3rd through 4th, and there's 5, 6. And then within these grade bands, they laid out, what would you expect students at this age to be able to do or show their understanding of for a particular element. So for example, kindergartners through 2nd graders, when it comes to abstraction, they would want to be able to use an external reference system or create a model or representation to solve a problem. That's what you would want kindergarten through second graders to be able to do, right? So whereas, and there's some similarities at grade 3. So we kind of noted the difference here of when we were looking at the books. So what's really the difference between the K2 and the grade 3-4? Well, if the characters were given a model or a representation to use and they used it, that we said really was at the K2 level, right? But at the 3-4 level, if the characters independently, no one told them, but they decided on their own that they wanted to use a model or some sort of representation, then that would really be using abstraction at the grade 3 or 4 level. Whereas at the grades 5 or 6 level, we see this is where we're asking students to create a new model or representation to solve a problem. So in our books, we were really looking for where the characters themselves in the books were inventing an abstraction or somehow developing or enhancing an existing abstraction by deconstructing or discussing the merits of an existing abstraction. So what you see here on the top line following the element is really what the Angeli and colleagues framework said is part of their framework for computational thinking. And then here where it says application notes, this is where my colleague and I, this is where we're starting to disentangle this of what this evidence looks for inside children's books. You'll notice that not every skill is broken up evenly. So while abstraction has specific examples for the 3 different grade bands, generalization has K2, but then 3 through 6 is all lumped together. And if you go down here into debugging, you'll see that debugging is the same across K6. So you lose a little bit of that granularity for debugging. But you have that granularity going on here with algorithmic thinking. So that's the framework that we really use to do this analysis. So the categorization. So we looked at the interest grade range, which sometimes is really difficult because publishers and different places like the Novelist K8, they might have conflicting grade bands. So we typically at least try to go with what the publisher was saying. So we have the interest grade bands, which says this book was written for kindergartners to second graders. We think it would be most interesting to this grade band. And then we compared that to the computational thinking competency grade band. So that would be going back to this chart, right? So evidence of what the characters or the plot line in the story was doing. Like where did it fall if it had examples of abstraction, or where did it fall if it showed examples of decomposition? So we really wanted to say, okay, if this book is targeting kindergarten through second graders and it shows elements of computational thinking, were those elements of computational thinking targeted, or were they more advanced, or were they foundational, meaning that they were at a grade band lower than maybe what the interest range was targeted at? So we call this foundational, right? So if the computational thinking competency was extending lower than the interest range, we said it was foundational, it was building skills. We said it was on target if there was a significant overlap with the interest grade range with this computational thinking competency range. And we said it was advanced if you had the interest range, but the competency level for the computational thinking was extending higher than the grade range for interest. So we were really looking at this throughout all of the books as we applied this K6 computational framework that comes out of Angeli, and really thinking about a system to differentiate learning based on both students' reading and interest level and their computational thinking competency level. Because you might have students with a really high reading level, but maybe their computational thinking skills are not as developed. So then really finding a book that differentiates and personalizes the learning for that student. Okay, so I just want to show a couple of graphs. Like I said, we looked at 27 different books. I'm only going to show a subset of the books that we looked at. And these 6 books, the thing that they all have in common is they were the 6 books that we analyzed that showed all 5 elements of computational thinking. Not every book showed 5 elements. Most books were showing around 3, sometimes 4 elements. I'm sorry, it's 2 or 3 elements of computational thinking. And as I said earlier, every book showed at least 1 element of computational thinking. These particular books are unique because they exhibited all 5 elements of computational thinking. So we have Hello Ruby, Adventures in Coding, How to Code a Sandcastle, Rock's a Secret Code, and books 2, 3, and 4 from the Secret Coder series. So this is a graphic novel series. There's 6 total, and books 2, 3, and 4 exhibited all 5 elements of computational thinking. So the blue line, which is the top line here, so the top line will be consistent across all of the graphs I show you. And this is the interest range for grades. So as we look here at Hello Ruby is really targeting kindergarten through 3rd grade, and that the grade range is at the bottom. So that is really what Hello Ruby is targeting. The line below it, or the green line, this is where the competency level is for abstraction. So we're only looking at abstraction right now. And so as we can see, the competency level for abstraction is actually beyond what the interest level is. So we coded this as being advanced. So if you're reading the Hello Ruby book, even though it's targeted for kindergarten through 3rd graders, the abstraction that's going on is actually at the 3rd and 4th grade level. Another good example here would be Roxa's Secret Code. So Roxa's Secret Code is again targeted for kindergarten through 2nd graders. And as we look at here, the abstraction example that's shown in the book is at the K2 level. So we would say that Roxa's Secret Code is on target, right? It's a book that has an interest in grade level for kindergarten through 3rd graders, and the computational thinking competency that is exhibited in the book is for kindergarten through 2nd graders. So that is a significant overlap, so we call that on target. So this is what it looks like for these different books. So this is for just the element of abstraction. So if we go to generalization, it looks a little bit different. Now, if you remember from earlier, the generalization, it only had the 2 bands. It had kindergarten through 2nd grade, and then 3rd through 6th grade, they were all lumped together. And we start to see that here. There's not as much of the granularity as you saw in the abstraction. So this is generalization. So if we were to look at How to Code a Sandcastle and Roxa's Secret Code, again, their interest range is kindergarten through 3rd grade. But the examples of generalization that they're showing for the computational thinking, this is going on into 3rd through 6th grade level. So we would say that How to Code a Sandcastle has advanced material for showing generalization. And Roxa's Secret Code would also have advanced material talking about generalization and computational thinking. Here's decomposition. So again, we can see that Hello Ruby and How to Code a Sandcastle, the 2nd bar, this sort of goldish bar, we're seeing that it's extending to the higher grades. So the examples here are very advanced. So again, thinking about your students, what are their interest levels, and then where are they in terms of their understanding of their computational thinking. So again, this is for decomposition. This is for algorithmic thinking. So we see, again, Hello Ruby, How to Code a Sandcastle. Oh, we might have a visitor. We might not. I don't know if that was my toddler coming home. So apologies now if we have a toddler interruption, which we might. I'm sure we all know what it's like living at home and having maybe pets or family members jump in as we're doing presentations. Okay, so moving on. Okay. Hey, how's it going? I'm presenting, okay? Can you go find Daddy? Why? Because I'm doing a presentation to a lot of special people. Because they want to learn about computational thinking. Can you come back in 30 minutes? Go find Daddy. All right, thanks everybody for your patience as we had a mild interruption there. I'm just going to close my office door really quick. Okay, and I'm back. So this last graph is debugging. So if you remember from the Angeli chart that I showed earlier, debugging was just one wide grade band. So debugging looked the same in kindergarten as it did in 6th grade. So that's why you see these dark gray bands just going all the way across. So pretty much everyone was on target if they had examples of debugging. So again, this is for 6 of the books that showed examples of all 5 elements of computational thinking. All right, so what does this look like? So How to Code a Sandcastle. This was one of our favorite books. This is Pearl and her robot Pascal. And this is targeted for kindergarten through 3rd grade. So if you teach at the kindergarten through 3rd grade level, this is a really great book for you. And if you have students that are maybe a little bit more advanced in their computational thinking, this would be a good book to use with them. So it's on target for their reading level, but if they're a little more advanced with understanding computational thinking, it's going to really push them in those areas because it's got advanced examples of abstraction, generalization, decomposition, and algorithmic thinking. And it's on target with debugging. As I said, every book that has an example of debugging will be on target because it's across the K6 band. Here is integrating CT as we think about the Secret Coders series. So there's 5 books in this series. They're all amazing. I highly recommend these books. And so these are graphic novels really targeted for 3rd through 7th grade. And so they kind of have a range. Like I said, books 2, 3, and 4, they cover all 6 elements of computational thinking. The first book covers the first 4. It does not cover debugging. And the last book covers just a few of the elements as well. So again, this is really good if you have students that are reading between the 3rd and 7th grade level, and they're pretty much on target or need to develop foundational skills in computational thinking. So this is a really great series to introduce computational thinking to your students. I think it's got some really good terminology. It has activities inside of it to help you practice. You can just do with a paper and pencil, and they use Logo. Which is a computer programming language throughout the book. But you can certainly do all of those activities without needing a device. So it's just a really lovely series. The characters are great. It also touches on some of the typical feelings and experiences that go on in middle school. So that's really great too. So that's just ways to think about incorporating examples of those 2 books. Okay, so just thinking about personalizing computational thinking learning. So thinking about differentiation, because we can differentiate according to readiness. We can also differentiating according to student interest and learning preference. So again, as we think about these books and we're personalizing the learning, we can personalize the learning according to students' interest and level and their reading level. And we can also tailor the book to their computational thinking competency level, their ability to engage with the different elements. So this is a chart that lists all the book titles, all the interest grade ranges, and then if they were on target, which is what TGT means, like it really overlaps with interest grade level, or if it was advanced, meaning the computational thinking going on was higher than what the interest grade level was, or foundational, meaning the computational thinking going on was below whatever the interest grade range level was. So again, number of books including each element. The vast majority of the books are really showing examples of abstraction and decomposition and algorithmic thinking, which makes sense. These are ones that are easier to talk about within the books. And like I said, most books were exhibiting about 3 of the elements of the 5 elements, with just a handful exhibiting 5. We only had one book that exhibited only 1. So again, most of the books are exhibiting more than 1. Um, just an example of what it looks like when you have two of the computational thinking elements going on. And a lot of times they're really interwoven with each other. So in Hello Ruby, which is a delightful book and series, Ruby engages in the element of decomposition when she's trying to cross the river, right? So she climbs to a roof, she's breaking the problem down into smaller steps, and she uses her trusty rope to tie sticks into the raft and ladder that she needs, right? That's her engaging in decomposition. Then later, she engages in generalization when she recognizes that she needs a bridge. So she can use that same rope and stick technique that she used to make the raft now to make the ladder, right? So they're really intertwined. Okay, so time for you to do a little bit of exploration and thinking about these books and how you could use them in your own classroom or your own experience, depending on what your job and your position is. So the directions, choose a book. This is the book list. And then in there, in the book list are links to either Amazon or Goodreads so that you can get a little bit more information about each of the books. Choose a book that catches your eye and interests you from the list. Then click on the book list and that will take you to the chart of books. And then look through, try to find one that catches your eye, go to the Amazon site or go to the Goodreads, read about the book, what is it about, what are the characters doing? And then I want your response of, why did you pick this particular book and how would you use this book? Would you use it to introduce a concept and expose students to computational thinking? Are you thinking about a lesson you already teach and you want to enhance it a little bit and this book would help? Or are you thinking about something you already teach and you want to extend it and take it to the next level and this book would help with that? Okay, so let's take about 5 or 6 minutes. Are there any questions about the task that you have? Can I get thumbs up from everybody if you know how to use the thumbs up marker, either physically or use the thumbs up in the Zoom? Okay, all right, good. So I'm going to set the timer for about 5 minutes. Oh, good. There's more thumbs. Excellent. Just give you a little bit of time to look through the book list. Look for a book that looks particularly interesting to you. Maybe a book that I didn't call out so far in my presentation. And then we're going to come back and have some conversation and some discussion about what people found. And if people want to put their names with their response as well, that'll be helpful so I can give some props to you. So we have our first person responding that they selected secret coders, which again, I can't talk enough positive things about secret coders because yeah, it's a graphic novel and it's an ongoing series, right? And so if we have those students that love a good series, this is a really great example to kind of keep that thinking and development of computational skills going. And this person is teaching third graders to use conditional statements. If then, great. They definitely use conditional statements in secret coders as a way to introduce coding for Mindstorm's EV3. This is great. You're definitely going to get that in secret coders. They do conditionals, they do if then. I think in number 3 or number 4. So definitely examples of that. I'm going to let that person keep typing and come down here to Michelle. Hello, Ruby. Yeah, Hello, Ruby's great. Adventure in Coding is a really good book that talks about computational thinking specifically, examples of those elements. There are 2 other books, Expedition in the Internet, and I'm blanking on the other book. And those all actually cover all of the computer science practices. They don't all cover computational thinking, but they all cover computer science practices. So that's really great. Yeah, and it has activities in the end. It does have really great activities. Sorry, just toddler mom coming in here while I'm doing my presentation. Cierra la puerta, por favor. Gracias, mija. Yeah, the activities in the back of the book of Hello Ruby are really great and can really support the work that you're doing in the classroom. And they're right there ready to go for you. Yeah. Yeah, I love this person up here. I'd love to have these books as an option for my own reading. Yeah. Secret Coders is great. I have the whole series. I've read them all multiple times. Secret Coders, Monsters and Modules. Yeah, visiting Flatland, right? Totally. I had a geometry teacher that talked all about Flatland. I've never actually read the book, but I knew about it when we got to it. So yeah, okay, whoever this is, former high school math teacher, yes, you use Flatland in your geometry. Are you Mr. Conway? Because Mr. Conway, same thing. That's awesome. Yeah, Secret Coders has a lot of really great mathematical constructs in it as well. Thanks, Nick. That's awesome. All right, just waiting for a few more responses. Yeah, okay, and person up here talking about integrated math. Yeah, exactly. Algebra, conditional thinking, absolutely. And science. Yeah, I mean, these books are great all around. So again, thinking about the integration, like what are you already doing in your math class? What are you already doing in your science class where you can bring this in and you can enhance the computational thinking that's maybe already going on, or extend and include computational thinking because it just naturally flows into it. Good. Yeah, these are all really great ideas. Awesome. Good. Thanks everybody for sharing those responses. Dollars at the bomb. Thank you, whoever the first person is, for your patience. Toddlers are the bomb and they like to Zoom bomb. Thanks, Rebecca. Oh, I appreciate your empathy and understanding. Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Those activities really help out with the hands-on learners. And that's really the key with computational thinking is you want to get students hands-on with the computational thinking, and you can do that with a lot of these books and never actually pick up an electronic device. So that's really great. Cool. Well, I'm going to come back and finalize the presentation here a little bit. So thanks everybody who shared their thoughts and their ideas. So my name again is Rachel Haroldson, and all this analysis we actually just got published a couple weeks ago. So we were working on it last fall, and then we were working on revisions in February. So this is the link right here if you want to read more about the paper, and we dig a little bit deeper. We talk more about examples from the different books, and you can get the full analysis there. And then just a shout out, thank you. We have a grant from the National Science Foundation that supports not only the program STEM Teach that I teach in, but then also supports some of the research that I've been doing. This is the tiny URL right here for today's presentation, and I can copy and paste that and put that into the chat in just a minute for you as well. And then we also have a paper that we got published last summer, and this is really looking at the computer science practices and how they are coming across in children's books and literature. And that one looked at kindergarten through 8th grade, and we analyzed 42 books. And we were also looking for diversity and representation, right? So that's really important in the books that we read our students. Can they see themselves in the books that they're reading? Can they learn about characters that look differently than they do? So we talk about that in this analysis that we completed from last year. So are there any questions in the remaining 2 minutes here from anybody? I will do the stop share so that I can just copy the URL. Any questions from anybody about some of the things that I was talking about? Yes, I'm seeing iPhone Julie's comment. Yes, Hello Ruby inside the computer. It's a great intro to vocabulary and terms. I think that's the one where she's looking for her mouse, right? It's also a really good book. And that one we do talk about in the other analysis that we did looking at the computer science practices. So there's the tiny URL there in the chat. Any other thoughts or questions from anybody? I really appreciate you coming to the presentation this evening.